Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. First of all, I'd like to thank the Chamber for the chance to speak in today's debate, but also want to touch upon something that Donald Cameron said in his speech. Really, sadly, Donald Cameron is no longer in the Chamber, but Mr Cameron highlighted that about committees being midway through the midway through the scrutiny, but certainly the Delegated Powers and Law Reform Committee is not midway through that. It's actually just about to begin that particular process. I speak today not as the convener of the Delegated Powers and Law Reform Committee, but speaking as an SNP backbench member. It's clear that Brexit has been utterly awful for Scotland, and the retained EU law bill will enable the UK Government to abandon vital legislation that really has protected Scottish interests for almost half a century. This will undermine devolution, something that Alex Rowley spoke about very powerfully in his contribution. Certainly, as the motion in front of us states, this this bill should be scrapped. This isn't just an issue for democracy, though, Presiding Officer. This Brexit Freedoms Bill creates huge uncertainty for citizens and businesses. It threatens to revoke key environmental protections, food standards and also workers' rights. And that's something that was touched upon in the Labour Party amendment and also that Sarah Boyack spoke about earlier on. Now, devolved areas would be heavily affected if this legislation were to pass. And with that power grab from Westminster, that will continue. Once again, something Alex Rowley spoke about powerfully in his speech. Now, it would only add to the already disastrous impact of a Brexit that the people of Scotland did not vote for. Now, one of those impacts includes a decline in EU nationals working in Scotland, which really has been detrimental for the hospitality, agricultural and meat processing sectors. This is something that has come up time and time again in this chamber and also in committees of this Parliament, highlighting that particular set of problems. Sadly, anything that we've heard from the UK Government over the last few years, and also sadly from members of the Scottish Conservative Party here in this Parliament, they have got absolutely no answers in terms of how to actually deal with and address those particular problems. Scottish universities have also been affected, experiencing substantial declines in numbers of students and also, importantly, research grants. Presiding Officer, as someone who was afforded the opportunity to study abroad due to Erasmus, but also qualifying for European Social Fund funding, the UK Government's decision to withdraw from this exchange programme really appalls me, because I know firsthand how important it actually was for me, but also how important it actually was for many other people that I studied with. Just one point, and I know firsthand how it certainly does help to transform the lives of many, many students. Before I bring in Mr Rennie, sadly I have to say that the Turing scheme certainly does not come anywhere near Erasmus.
Willie Rennie.
Has the member worked out why the Scottish Government here hasn't even done what Wales has achieved so far? We've got thousands of places already available for students in that country thanks to their government. Has he worked out why his government hasn't done it as well?
Stuart McMillan.
Mr Rennie, I know actually that Mr Hepburn actually answered a question on this last week. I'm not sure if Mr Rennie was in the chamber or not, so I'd advise him to actually go and have a look at the official report and you would get the reply. Presiding Officer, at the outset of my speech, I fully support the Scottish Government's position and the concerns certainly very much shared across civil society, the business community and also the legal profession. The UK Government's own independent assessor actually described the Tories' plans to rip up EU law as, and I quote, not fit for purpose. The bill has been condemned in a letter signed by over a dozen British businesses, legal, worker and environmental groups, including the Trade Union Congress and the Institute of Directors. And looking at the proposed amendments, It seems that the Labour Party agree that the retained EU law bill jeopardises, and I quote certainly from the amendment, the Environmental Health Standards and Protections Bill over 47 years of EU membership, and I quote, also creates enormous uncertainty for workers and businesses. Why then have Keir Starmer and Anna Sarwar vowed not to overturn Brexit if the Labour Party ever came to power again? Why have they become Brexiteers?
Sarah Boyack.
Absolutely clear, if the member had a look at the discussions we've had both in Scotland and at a UK level, that this bill needs to go. And that's what we're saying. There's an opportunity for us. Keir Starmer is talking about respecting the will of the people, but it does not mean you have to support this bill. And that's why we're pushing on the Tories to dump it, because it's so damaging.
Stuart McMillan, I can give you the time back on both those interventions.
Thank you very much. I hear what Sarah Boyack is saying, but fundamentally, the issue of Brexit is bigger than this one bill. And Scotland's position, and I would argue the UK's position, should actually be working with, as compared to against, the trading partnership potential of the other 27 EU members. Now, moving on to the Lib Dems amendment. Now, Willie Rennie, for many, many years, him and his party will have argued for federalism. And it's one of his party's policies, and they are quite right to do so. Similar, independence is a policy of my party, and we are quite right to argue for independence. So with that, this is where I genuinely, if Mr Rennie's party are democratic, I genuinely don't understand why they are arguing that Scotland should not actually have the opportunity to have a referendum on independence, and actually to then, potentially, for us to go back into the European Union, something that Mr Rennie in the past, has argued that being a member of the EU is highly important and hugely important for Scotland. Sadly, once again, his party doesn't want to rejoin the European Union either. So much has happened since 2014, Brexit being one. And if the Unionists are so sure that they will win, then why not allow Scotland that independence referendum? Also, one other thing, Mr Rennie, I'm sure if Mr Rennie wanted to answer this, in his amendment, he's actually touched upon to build, and I quote, to build stronger relationships with European neighbours. Can Willie Rennie actually explain what that means? Surely building stronger relationships actually is about becoming a member of the European Union.
The member will take an intervention.
Willie Rennie?
I'm very keen on developing stronger relationships with the European Union. I think that is very important. But equally so, I want to have strong relationships within the United Kingdom, something that Mr McMillan wants to undermine.
Stuart McMillan?
I'm sorry, Mr Rennie. I genuinely think that you're sadly wrong in that particular regard. As an English member of the Scottish National Party, I want to have the strongest relationships with the rest of the UK. I just want to do it on equal terms as compared to not being part of a situation where Scotland clearly is not an equal partner in the United Kingdom. So, finally, to the Tory amendment. This simply is an attempt to deflect rather than debate how their obsession with Brexit has actually harmed Scotland's economy. And many colleagues from across the chamber today have actually highlighted the evidence that's actually been gathered in the Culture Committee, which has been damning. It's highlighted the real fears of the Scottish legal experts, exporters and also consumer rights bodies. And the post-Brexit power grab is real. Both the Welsh and Scottish governments have urged their respective devolved legislatures to refuse consent, fearing for the future of devolution. Now, Scotland rejected Brexit out of hand, but we have been dragged out of the European family of nations against our will. And in 2014, the No campaign infamously argued that voting yes would remove our EU citizenship. And it's now clearer than ever that only independence offers Scotland a way to rejoin our fellow Europeans and retain EU-wide protections on the environment, food standards and workers' rights. And if our closest European neighbours can be wealthier, happier and fairer, then why not Scotland? Why should Scotland be prevented from actually helping lift our constituents, our neighbours, our friends, our family out of poverty? Presiding Officer, the Tory talk of Brexit opportunities and benefits is absolute nonsense. And as I said in the Chamber last week, Adam Posson, a former member of the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee, suggested that Brexit was responsible for up to 80% of the increase to prices in the UK. Now, if that is a Brexit opportunity or a Brexit benefit, then I really don't know what kind of parallel universe that the Tories are actually living in. In the meantime, the Scottish Government continues to present the prospectus for a fairer and green future as an independent European country through the building of the New Scotland Papers. And I will welcome the fact that when we do get an independence referendum, and then we will win that independence referendum, so Scotland can be the better country, the country we know it actually can be. Thank you.